So this particular section, part 2, is on meditation. So when we cultivate the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths, that is the major aspect of cultivation. The three turning correspond to the three types of wisdom that can arise when we cultivate them. So first turning is about proclamation of Dhamma by the Buddha. So if you listen to the Sutra or the discourse as proclaimed by the Buddha, then if you have your past affinity and condition, you can awaken. When you awaken, you develop a type of wisdom called Suttamaya Panya, means Sutta, a wisdom born of hearing the Sutta. The Sutta is the discourse of the Buddha. They are called suttas. Then after that, the second turning is you have to go beyond just hearing or listening. And nowadays, maybe under our modern era, we can listen to the recorded talk, the video or the pen drive recordings. Or in the early days, we had this cassette tape. Then later on, we have the CDs. Then now we can listen to all the audio file. The audio file now they can come in many forms. You can also save them through your pen drives or through your whatever file. Then also the video recording now they are very clear. The audio recording also very clear. So we have the benefits of science. So scientific advancement has helped us a lot. Then nowadays we also have all this software to help us to produce books, soft copy and hard copy. Then we can refer to them very easily, very conveniently. So all this can be part and parcel of the first turning. So when you listen to it again, view it again, the video, or you read about it, all this constitute first turning. But during the time of the Buddha, you have to be around to listen when he is delivering the teaching or the sermon. Otherwise, you have to wait for Ananda to repeat it based on certain conditions that arise. And Ananda can actually repeat them because he has very good memory. Then when it comes to second turning, the Buddha said, after you have listened, if it still does not impact on you very much because you don't have past support or karmic conditioning to help you or affinity to help you understand or awaken, very likely in the past you have not cultivated before, then you can go for the second turning. The second turning is, the Buddha says, you should reflect, contemplate, and inquire into what he has proclaimed. Then you can develop clearer understanding. It's just like in the school or in the classes or in the university. When you listen to a subject that is new, where you don't have prior knowledge or understanding, it can be a technical subject, physics especially, or chemistry, or even biology. Then there are a lot of other type of subject, geography, history, and also the economics, arts, law, or whatever. So when you first time listen to it, it's like you are not able to comprehend much, but they are so alien to you, like very new to you. So what you need to do is you have to go through the teaching again, or go through the notes again, or read up about it more from other source, textbook or whatever. Mm. Then you reflect, you contemplate, then you inquire. Why did the Buddha say this? How can I develop the understanding of it? So when you start to reflect, contemplate, then inquire, you develop a type of understanding which is more stable, clearer. That's why we call it contemplative wisdom. So this contemplative wisdom is to allow you, yeah, to develop clearer understanding so that you can develop a deeper understanding of the teaching. So when you start to study it more, listen to it again and again, discuss with people, then develop the contemplative wisdom, the inquiry through Dhamma discussion or whatever, then you start to have clearer understanding. Then you start to have the ability to assimilate them. Yeah. So this assimilation of the Dhamma is very important. The second turning is for you to reflect, contemplate, inquire, and develop the clearer understanding so that this Dhamma stabilize. Then you can assimilate them into your nature so that the understanding become more stable. You can do that. This is second turning wisdom. The Buddha called it Chintamaya Panya. Panya is wisdom. Panya born of contemplation and reflection and inquiry into the truth that the Buddha has proclaimed. So these are called second turning wisdom. Uh, so once you have the first and second turning wisdom, it will prepare the base for you to receive teachings or truth to awaken. So these are called initial wisdom that a cultivator needs. That's the reason why the first two turning is less of a bhavana type or meditative discipline. It's more of listening, reflection, contemplation, and inquiry. It means you must have a calm mind, a collected, clear mind, a creative mind that can have the spiritual faculty to help you to understand spiritual teaching. So first and second turning wisdom are very important and very useful, especially for cultivators who are new, who has not developed any form of past cultivation. But for those who have past cultivation very stable or very strong, when they come, they don't have to go through the third turning. From the first, second turning, they can awaken straight away because they have cultivated before, they have understood this before. So the moment they listen, the nature understand. The nature doesn't feel that this is something new or alien to them. It's like very familiar. And because of the ability to comprehend, where in the past you have developed the cultivation until it's so clear, so stable. That's why whenever you arise as a form of mind, you only need truth to awaken. And these are people who are very special. They call them the great beings. That's the reason why this line, my nature understand, because when it arises, it has this ability. A lot of things that are related to the spiritual understanding, my nature get attracted and it open up and have the capacity to comprehend and understand and awaken. Then it knew the beauty of that truth. Then It doesn't need people to explain to me my nature. Immediately, when this nature awaken or understand, sometimes even the person who share that truth may not understand that truth, but my nature already have the understanding. And it's pretty amazing. Yeah. That's why when I reflect back, I realize this line also saying, whatever understanding I have, I will reflect, contemplate, and stabilize it until very, very clear, until it's like a part of my nature, until I understand it like inside out. That's why if this life you cannot have this stability or understanding, in future when you take a new birth with a new form of mind, you don't stand a chance of understanding all these things. That's the reason why in cultivation, even after you have awakened, you have to continuously stabilize this understanding, continuously go into life, reflect, contemplate, and stabilize this understanding. And I realized the best way to do it is to be involved in the teaching, to be involved in the Dhamma, uh, life itself. Then when you are involved in the teaching, like what I did when people invited me in the year 2004 to share, then my nature was ready, then the condition was there, and it decided to come out and share. Then when I did it, I realized it keep my nature constantly involve itself in Dhamma. Then it will evolve its understanding and share depending on condition that arise. Because cultivators are all very different. Some at very different stages of their evolution or cultivation. Some may have their past. But most of the time, most of them are just normal cultivator. But once a while you will meet some special one. Uh, so all this understanding, they will start to unfold. Then depending on the condition and the nature of the cultivator, this nature know how to share. Uh, then when it share, it will also go through life to experience more and more things. And my nature realize the more I give, the more stronger this nature become. Uh, That's why that sharing and giving is very, very vibrant. It's not what you think. It's not like those selfish people, hey, how can I teach you everything? After that, you become better than me. In Dhamma, there is no such thing because technically it's impossible unless the other person has his past, has his very special past. Then he can actually immediately awaken and progress very fast. But most people can't. Most people can't. And by the time you understand what my nature share and say, my nature has evolved further because it continues to inherit from its spiritual nature. And its spiritual nature has cultivated for so long. And the understanding is so like uh, so complete in a sense that there is no way you can really catch up with it. And the moment this nature connect and have the understanding, then when it starts to inherit the spiritual nature, most cultivators haven't even understood what that nature is, come into contact with it. So there is no way you can catch up. Then by the time you meditate until you realize what that thing is, that is just the beginning. You are at the infancy. Then you have to go through all the transformation, changes happening and the understanding. That's why it's near to impossible uh, unless you have your past. So this type of cultivation, you need to have that type of understanding behind. That's the reason why I always advise kilometers to reflect, contemplate on the Dhamma until very, very clear. If this life also you cannot get it developed until very, very clear, future life when you come, you don't stand a chance to recall this teaching or to connect back to this teaching. If you really want to have the ability, you must stabilize this understanding until it's part of you, part of your nature. So that whenever you arise because of your vow, because we vow to have, huh, to invoke power of marriage for causes and conditions for us to have this right view and right understanding, life after life, whenever we choose to come or we have to come. That aspiration, that vow is very important, very powerful. Then together with your cultivation, your stability of understanding, very fast you will receive truth and you will awaken, you will progress and you will connect. That's how you improve from life to life, from stage to stage of cultivation. Uh, then you need to go into the bodhisattva way to move in a big way. Otherwise, it's not easy. Sainthood way relatively is a lot easier. So this is the part today my nature share because I think some of you are ready to understand this and receive this truth. Now we will read on from the Heart Sutta lesson 39. There is a meditative question. He said, Bratio, the Sutta said Buddha became enlightened through self-realization. Then why is it also mentioned in the first sermon or the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta that the Buddha himself also had to go through the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths to become enlightened? So this question, I think the person who asked the question was a bit confused because when the Buddha proclaimed after he became enlightened, with this teaching, he self-realized. He has teacher. It doesn't mean he don't have teacher. But all the teacher that taught him, he never realized this teaching of the profound Dhamma that he realized. Because what he realized was completely different from what all those teacher or guide that taught him. And in the first sermon is mentioned that he himself, as a bodhisattva at that time, has to go through the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths before he can proclaim to be the fully enlightened one. So it doesn't mean that the three turning and the Four Noble Truths was not self-realized by him. What it means is Sakyamuni Buddha has cultivated this before. That's why when he was underneath the Bodhi tree, when he made that determination, when the condition fall into place, he suddenly connect to his nature. And when he connect to his nature, he inherited all his past perfection and cultivation. Then he start to understand many, many things that he has never understood before. Then he came to the great realization of the Four Noble Truths and his three turning, where he realized for many, many lives he has been cultivating this one. And this is the one that bring forth the three type of corresponding wisdom: Suttamaya Panya, Chintamaya Panya, and Bhavanamaya Panya. So Bhavanamaya Panya is the third turning wisdom. Wisdom born of Bhavana, meditative discipline. So after you have received the first and second turning wisdom, you will have this initial wisdom to prepare you to receive truth. It's like a base, very stable. Then whatever you do after that, whether first turning hearing or reading listening or whatever. Then second turning, contemplation or reflection or meditative training, the third turning, it can trigger off awakening inside. Then you can just develop the third turning, very penetrative awakening. So this is the reason why the Buddha, under the teaching, when he started teaching the five ascetics, that was the first time he proclaimed the teaching. Inside the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, he said, not until he himself as a bodhisattva has understood this three turning of the Four Noble Truths in its essential way, he cannot proclaim to be the fully enlightened one. Which means you need the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths to develop the three types of wisdom to fully awaken. That's the reason why it's so important, this three turning of the Four Noble Truths. And I realized that Theravada Sutta, although it's stated in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first sermon, that three turning of the Four Noble Truths teaching, but it was seldom taught or expanded on. They cannot connect to the three types of wisdom. Suttamaya Panya, Chintamaya Panya, and Bhavanamaya Panya. In fact, these three types of wisdom was taught separately. Not as a teaching under the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. Then only the Mahayana teaching put a lot of emphasis on the three turning. Sanchon follow the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths. That's why the Mahayana, they saw the importance of this teaching. Whereas Theravada, you were to check, so far I think I only heard of, two monks that actually talk about this three turning of the Four Noble Truths, or share some form of teaching. One of them is, I think, Ajahn Sumedho. He wrote a book on it. But his explanation of the three turning is different based on his understanding. Then the other one, I forgot who already. There was another monk who also mentioned it. I think our Piyadasi, under the book The Buddha and His Teaching, by Venerable Piyadasi. It's mentioned inside there, the handful of leaf, the three turning of the Four Truths. But there was no emphasis, no real teaching, and they didn't connect to the three types of wisdom. So because of that, the authentic Dhamma, which is very penetrative, was somehow not there, missing. Even the Mahayana style three turning, it run a little bit. There is a slight deviation. But it's in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So if you read that sutta, you will understand what I mean. Then when I was asked to come out to share, that was the first sutta that I decided to share when they asked me to start the Dhamma sharing. Because I said the Buddha did that, and I saw one poster at the Vipassana center at that time, above Kanan, their old center. The five ascetics with the Buddha. There is a pictorial, I think they hang it on the wall there. Then I told Yuen Chan, since the Buddha start with that, I also will start with that. Then after that, I asked her, I said, do you happen to have a copy of the English translation of this sutta or not? I said, I haven't read the sutta. She was very kind. She said, yeah, I get you a copy. Because she was involved in chanting. So there was a chanting book that has this. So when I read through the chanting book, I was so surprised that this three turning is so beautiful. And I knew what that teaching was. I knew the three types of wisdom, how it's connected and all those things. That's the reason why when I share, it becomes very different. very different. So that was the year 2004. Now I will read through the notes again, continue from where we stopped. So I answer this Kayamita who asked the question. I said the Buddha had already cultivated the the Dhamma, the Bodhisattva way, for 3 3/4 aeons or Asangkhaya Kapas to fulfill his 10 perfection cultivation prior to his full enlightenment in India 2600 plus years ago. So the Buddha was already a Bodhisattva then, and he had cultivated the three turning of the Four Noble Truths before. What happened was, when he became fully enlightened underneath the Bodhi tree, he inherited all his past perfection and cultivation. Hence, he knew the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths are very important. So he didn't learn from anybody. There is no contradiction. This teaching was self-realized by him, and he inherited them. Then in the first sermon, the Buddha's opening statement is to advise the five ascetics to avoid the two extremes. This advice is very useful, very important if you want to cultivate successfully. He said you have to avoid sensual indulgence. Do not be heedless. Do not indulge in the senses. If you do that, it will lead to downfall. Then the second extreme is self-mortification. We are following the middle path, which is the Noble Eightfold Path, as proclaimed by the Buddha. The deeper meaning of the middle way or middle path is to transcend all duality, means to go beyond the two extremes, the dualities. In the early days when I was cultivating the Buddha Dhamma, I haven't really heard of the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths. But I was indeed very lucky because I met a Thai monk, Prajayantra Amarabiko, in 1988. And it was he who constantly, not less than 6 times, advised me to contemplate all the Dhamma spoken by the Buddha until they become very, very clear. I didn't know that this was the second turning of the Four Noble Truths until much later. He also emphasized a lot on the importance of cultivating the daily mindfulness. Because of my very strong saddha and faith in Ajahn Yantra and the Triple Gem is my past cultivation. I cultivated this Dhamma contemplation or the second turning wisdom and the daily mindfulness a lot. And my understanding of the Buddha Dhamma started to stabilize, and my progress along the path of Dhamma became very smooth and fast. It was only in the year 2004 when I was invited by a sister. This sister is actually Sister Yun Chan in the Dhamma to share the teaching that arises the condition for me to really look at the first sermon or the first sermon sutta, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. I remember it was at section 17, Slang of Vipassana Society, Miss Above Kanan Restaurant, when she asked me what topic I wanted to start off with. I then saw a framed photo of the Buddha giving the first sermon to the five ascetics on the wall. This is the part just now I shared. So I said to her, since the Buddha started with that sutta, I would also start with that sutta, the first sermon. I then asked her for a copy of the sutta, which she so kindly gave it to me. It was a Thai chanting book. And the moment I read the three turning of the Four Noble Truths, straight away I could link my cultivation to it. And there was so much joy. I suddenly understood its meaning and how the three turning of the Four Noble Truths correspond to the three types of wisdom that the Buddha taught us, talk about in the sutta. I had developed on my own cultivation following these three turnings without knowing that they were the three turnings of the Four Noble Truths.